Here.
It took me a long time to set up all of this stuff in exactly this order at Jack Frost Mountain. Like I got to Jack Frost early this morning. I brought all these knickknacks, the shelving, and everything. Got a back room, set it all up, and had to adjust the lighting to make it look completely like home. Put the Hartford Whalers puck right there in that particular angle. Because we do it like this, you know what happens with this puck. This puck's like a transfer puck. You get like this, it's the Binghamton Whalers. So you can go either way. So yeah, so no. What happened was it's very, very cold here in the Northeast. It's bitter cold, like uncomfortably cold, and just my daughter and wife are nuts, and they still wanted to do this, and I said, I don't think Owen's really up for skiing in -4-degree weather. I mean, he's doing great, but is this really necessary? So, yeah.
It was -4 here this morning.
We decided that.
I've had it. I mean, I've really had it. I just I would be taking 25-degree weather and celebrating, and it's -4.
Okay, it's -40 here, so cry me a river.
I know we had this discussion because I don't wear a jacket. I don't wear a jacket. Like if you're going to the market, we all live in cold weather climates. We're waiting for Tice. We'll discuss this for a second.
I thought I had frostbite last night when I came home from hockey because I walked in the door and my face was red for at least an hour.
I have frostbite still from when I was a goalie playing younger on my thumb, and when I'm out, if I'm out in the cold for more than too long a time, my thumb, you get that awful feeling. It just dies on me. Like it feels like my thumb's gonna fall off. But anyway.
Well, yeah, I invested in a pair of gloves recently that has a dual purpose, one for outside and one for NHL and AHL press boxes, because and I'm not complaining, it's just what you have to endure. The press box at the Ricoh Coliseum in Toronto, especially where I seat, I have a vent that shoots cold air right at me, and my hands get so cold that I had to buy a pair of fingerless gloves just to keep my hands from getting frostbite.
Colder than a witch's toes.
Lunch.
Yeah, up there.
There's Ty.
It's cold in Michigan too.
We're getting is this one of these polar vortexes coming down to kill us all? Is that what they're saying?
It's the Saskatchewan Screamer.
Right. This is cold air marine. Cold air Monica. They got to name everything on the Weather Channel, so I'm going to name this cold air Monica. Coming down from the north.
I'm not going to say what I'm thinking right now.
I got to tell you that this morning, the Detroit Red Wings every year hold a really novel event, and it's basically high school journalism day at Joe Louis Arena today, and they have a panel of 4 journalists. I'm on the panel. I've been on it for a few years, and they ask questions of us, and then they bring in 3 players, and they bring in Mike Babcock, and they bring in Ken Holland, and so all these, it's like 70 high school journalists, the top journalists in the state, all come in, and they have this day-long, and it's really a unique event, and I always enjoy going there because it's pretty inspirational to be in a group of high school seniors who are all would like to get into the same profession that I've been in. And
isn't that great that there's that many there's in high school?
Yeah, well, it is, and what I find is that it always sort of updates my thought process about what's going on in the young journalism world, because the one thing that I've noticed through the years is now it's become a lot more about video. Like almost all of them who do report in this event are all doing it with their cameras. Their cell phone cameras are capturing every moment, and it's really kind of a unique experience. And I'm not aware, there probably is, but I'm not aware of any other team that does anything quite like that.
I've never heard that before for a team, and that's just awesome.
They've been doing it since the mid-1990s.
Wow.
So
I of course, man the high school and junior high school blogger convention, No, for hockey players, for hockey writers. No, I'm just kidding.
Well,
No, that's
but the other interesting element of this is that they have a writing contest as well, and well, Mike wants us to get started, so I'll leave that for another time.
no, wait, you can't just. You got
no, in the middle. I'm just.
Oh no, well, no. I mean, it's not that big a deal. I mean, I was just saying what's interesting for me is that they have a writing contest, and the winner of the contest, they have judges, spends the day with me, and then they write a story that I post on USA Today. So we've been doing this only for about 4 years, but it's been interesting to me to have these young journalists kind of follow me for a day, and I get to know them, and I've sort of followed their careers. Now, the first one we did was 4 years ago, so he's still in his junior year, but it's pretty clear he's going to be a successful journalist. And the one I did 2 years ago, Jillian Seach is a sophomore at Eastern Michigan University in both broadcasting and journalism, and she's on her college papers very successful. So I kind of see the next generation of young writers, and they're all very aggressive and very talented.
That's something.
But let's talk hockey. I agree with you.
You know what I would like to do? I mean, if they're going to follow you around, you should have them come. You should have them be part of the show.
Have them come in and do Hockey Buzz.
Yeah, have them come in and do
all
the show.
70 of them.
Or the one, no, whoever comes on this year,
Yeah, at least the winner. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
I love that. That would be fun.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea, and I think that would be a great experience for them.
Yeah, because like you say, it is all about video. I mean, and everybody you talk to now, I mean, and if you're out there, and I do get a lot of emails, which I'm sure everybody does, about people who are like, oh, how do I get started in this industry and all that. And I always say, learn how to edit video. Learn social media, obviously. You already know the game. You can probably already write, but be able to take a good picture, because everybody's a one-man show now. You really have to do that. And if you're not doing that, you're going to get stepped on. And that's what we've seen. So
a lot of discussion about social media today, obviously, because and it was interesting. One of the panelists pointed out that the one thing about it's really like crucial, essential, imperative that all young people coming up today know everything about social media, because when they join an organization that still has dinosaurs in it, the dinosaurs will expect them to know everything about social media. So, and which is true. I mean, I've seen that even in my own profession, that the younger you are, like if I have a question about social media, I look for somebody under the age of 23. Right.
I mean, and I've said this for a while, and Ty's a good example of this. A younger guy coming up, and that we're just starting to see, the first group of kids come out of college who have really been a part of this kind of journalism. And until then, before then, it was everybody trying to adjust on the fly, and now it's you're going to see some powerhouses. You're going to see some people come on the board that really know what the hell they're doing in this thing. And
well, here's the latest change for me, and this was really at the Olympics as well, but now we're really starting to hammer it home, is that writing the quick version of any story with the cell phone in mind. That long form stories don't work so well, as we all know, on the telephone, on the cell phone. It's hard to just the block. Yeah, it's scrolling down. The block of copy is too long. So now we basically are coming up with these kind of 5 blocks of granite, essentially. We have little nuggets, and that's the game story. You sort of tell it in 5 little blocks of copy, and that's the best. It seems that's the best way to read it, and it's just different. I mean, it's not right or wrong. It's just different.
Yeah, it definitely is, and it's always fascinating. I love this kind of stuff, and I'd like to do a podcast.
Let's talk hockey, though.
We will. We'll start now.
Can I say one quick thing real quick?
Go ahead, Josh.
Before we start? Did you guys see Pat Hickey's column today?
No.
You guys should take a look at it later. Toronto Maple Leafs have become a punchline, and I'm just going to read one quick line. The first line. What do a recent high school dropout and the Maple Leafs have in common?
No hope for the future?
They're both young and have no goals and no prospects.
Wow. That started off like a drummer joke, like a band drummer joke. What's the difference between a drummer and a pizza delivery guy? That's what it felt like to me, and that's where I thought you were going. A little too on the nose, but yeah, okay, I got it.
To use one of my dad's old lines, that's about as funny as cancer.
Oh, jeez.
Well, my son had a question. What's a give a bleep a meter? Like he actually read. He was listening to the podcast, and he's like, "What's a give a bleep a meter?" And I was trying to explain to him, well, it's the S word, and it's give a meter. And he's like, "Wow, why would anyone give that?" I said, "I don't know. It is kind of an odd thing."
It's not a good present.
No. And then this is the same kid. This is my son, and we'll start this for sure. But this is my son in a nutshell. This is the same kid the other day says, "Dad, I was thinking about the expression one-trick pony." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's a pretty cool expression." He's like, "What's it mean?" I said, "Well, it means you're basically a guy who can do one thing and nothing else, and then you made
Go around in a circle. Pony goes around in a circle.
Right, one-trick pony."
Yeah.
And he says, "Well, Dad, a pony with one trick is a pretty smart pony." It's it's kind of true. Ponies, they can do that one thing, but it's still a halfway decent intelligence pony. Anyway, continuing on. Here we go. It's the date is
Friday the 13th.
13th, of course.
Yeah. The day before Valentine's Day.
Yes. And 50 Shades of Grey is coming out just in time for Valentine's Day. That's the society we live in, kids. 50 Shades of Grey is the big date movie for Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
How many of the guys, though, are going to go see that under the guise of just to see what the fuss is all about?
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
The one thing I didn't know is that the girl in that movie is the daughter of Don Johnson and Melanie Griffith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she's beautiful.
She's gorgeous.
Striking eyes, but, I heard the movie is
I heard it's bad.
Obviously, it's dumbed down from the book. I mean, that's to be given.
I heard it's pretty weak. But
yeah.
I'd like to see a poll after that movie's seen of how many people are active after the movie.
There's definitely a joke there somewhere, Josh.
Yeah.
All right, let's continue on. Here we go. Hey, Hockey World. How you doing? It's Friday. I was going to say October. Here we go. Hey, Hockey World, what's going on? It's Friday, February 13th, 2015.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Ty Anderson.
I'm Kevin Allen of USA Today Sports.
I'm Josh Rimmer.
And I am Eklund, and that is why Ty is the man, because he jumped right into the spot there without hesitation. And I was like, is he going to go second or third, or what's he going to do? I didn't say anything.
No, I had it lined up. I knew where I was going.
You were right there. You were right there for sure.
Jumped into the hole.
Yes. So last night, I don't know what you guys watched, but I watched Winnipeg, Nashville, because obviously you got to watch. It's like you're driving past a pile up and you want to see what's going on. And I wanted to see how it's always. This is the great thing about hockey. As I'm watching this, I'm realizing how much I just love to see guys play their first games in new uniforms. I mean, it's not a big deal, but there's something amazing about it. And it's almost like otherworldly. Why is this? Why is it that it's just so exciting to see Drew Stafford? I haven't watched a game in my life to watch Drew Stafford play. But suddenly I want to see Drew Stafford go on to the rink in a Winnipeg Jets jersey, and I think that is so cool.
You live a sheltered life if you get excited about Drew Stafford in a Winnipeg Jets jersey.
I guess I do. But does anybody hear me on this? I mean,
I do. I find it interesting whenever they go to a new team. It's you kind of like that. When I was a kid too, you liked when the new baseball cards or hockey cards would come out and they had a new uniform on. It was a different look. So I know exactly what you're talking about. I didn't feel obliged to do that for that reason, but I know what you're talking about.
It's just, and they skated out together, and I was watching the Winnipeg feed because I wanted to hear what they were saying, and the two skate out together. It's just cool. I think about all that's gone on, and I think about how the jerseys were stitched before. I don't know why I get stupidly sentimental about this kind of stuff, but
it's exciting, Ak. I mean, I remember back in the day when I was a kid, there was that big deal between Detroit and Buffalo, and I think it was '81. The Foligno, Dale McCourt, Jim Schoenfeld deal, 7-player deal, and the excitement of seeing Foligno and McCourt and Brent Peterson in a Buffalo uniform, new players, change, excitement, it's something that you want to see. But after a couple games, you sort of get used to it, and then you fail to even remember that Tyler Myers wore a Sabres jersey or Stafford wore a Sabres jersey for their entire careers.
Did any of you guys have friends like I had who wanted a guy to be signed so badly that they would go and get the jersey of the player before even it was done? Like I had a friend who did that. Al Morgani did that before Eric Lindros. was actually before when the whole thing was going down. You know, where they were going to decide whether he was a Ranger or a Flyer. Morgani showed up. I was doing some work at the Inquirer and interning and stuff like that, and Morgani showed up in a Lindros jersey, for Flyers Lindros jersey. This is like 3 days before the actual hearing. We're like, you know, it's just whoa, pretty good. So anyway, yeah, I had friends but I actually had friends who would go that far.
You know, hearing Mike talk about Dale McCourt, does anyone know what Dale McCourt is famous for back when he played? Something he did.
No.
That I don't think I've ever seen anybody do this other than him.
No. Not at all.
Dale McCourt did not celebrate goals.
Really?
Yep. Yeah. He would basically, when he would score a goal, he would skate back to center ice and get ready for the puck to drop. He always said it was his father who said that, you know, a celebration, all it does is you're just showing up the other team. You should expect to score, and it's no reason to, you know, get carried away. So, you know, occasionally you might see him just, you know, kind of raise the stick a little bit, but nothing beyond that. And usually he didn't even do that. You know, he'd score the goal, his guys would come over, they would hug him, and then he just would go back to.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, I've never seen another player do that.
That's like that. That's badass. Not to say anything, but that is that's that kind of thing. It's like I'm so good, I'm going to just score a goal.
Well, it's kind of the old Joe Paterno, and I hate to say his word does. You know, when you get to the end zone, act like you expected to get there. You know what I mean? You know. So.
Right. That's cool. I like that. Now I got to show something, guys, because this was sent to me by a guy who who I don't know if it was the person who did this or a person who saw it and sent it to me. So I have to say, but this was they did a calendar called the Faces of Daryl Sutter. Check this out. So I love this. So this is the beginning.
I haven't seen it yet.
All right. So this is the cover of the calendar. Okay. So then you get down here, and here's January. Okay. And February, March. Here we go. April, May, June. There you go. Happy June. Right. July, August, September. October, November, and of course, December.
Come on, they don't have the picture that we had on our previous webcast deck with him and the Muppet.
Him and Sam the Eagle. No, they don't have that one.
I like his Popeye look best of all. You know, when he's kind of, it looks like if you put a pipe right in him, he looks like he could play. You know, Popeye. Yeah. I love that look. But you know,
he likes canned spinach.
But props to the guy who did that. That's hilarious.
That's clever.
You know, I mean, the King should put that out. I mean, honestly, that's that good.
What I want to talk about, Eck, is you know, I've been looking at this. I've been going from team to team. I'm really trying to get a handle on this year's trade deadline. And I know, and you know, that we're going to have, when all said and done, we're going to have as many guys as we usually have that moves. I mean, that's just the way it is. Statistically, every year you're going to have an X amount of guys are moved. But you know, I've got my list. Like I know that the Blues, the Blackhawks, Detroit, and the Penguins now are not likely to make significant moves. You know, for whatever the Penguins' reason is, it's just going to be hard. Now they would like to do something, but it's a dollar per dollar exchange, and as you know, some of the Penguin faithful point out to me, well, who are we taking off this team that you know that they could, because they seem to need everybody they have. So and then we have the problem children, which are the Rangers and Bruins. And now I know that LA is going to make a move and Tampa Bay is going to make a move. But my question to everyone here is, like, we have a lot of available players, and who's going to take all those guys? Like, where, you know, I mean, you kind of sense that it will, you know, Franzen's going to find a home. You know, Sekera's going to end up somewhere.
Yeah.
Certainly, Vermette is. I mean, you know, we know all these guys are going to, but it just seems like we don't have quite enough teams to take all those players in, and I wonder whether could this be the first season where we're disappointed a little bit that maybe the numbers it won't ever be down significantly, but instead of getting the normal 40 guys, you know, might there only be 28 this season?
I agree, and you know, and this is something I think about a lot when I do my rumor chart, because I realize I'm mentioning only, like I would love to have certain teams. There are certain teams that aren't even on the chart, and people are like, you've got 40 players and my team's not mentioned at all. I said, yeah, I just haven't heard them doing anything, and yet, the teams I have on there, I have many times. I have, Tampa's on there. I have Detroit with a defenseman, and yet you look and you're saying, well, Detroit's not going to get the 6 defensemen that I have on the rumor that they might possibly get. I said, but those are, there's not that many teams looking for that kind of defenseman. So,
yeah, what could happen, I think, like the Red Wings, what they don't want to give up, they won't give up Larkin or Mantha, and they don't want to give up their second or first round picks. So that really is going to hamstring them. And we've talked for all season about their right-handed defenseman, the point on the power play, but their power play is exceptional. It's been exceptional.
Yeah.
So now the demand that they felt like they had before, isn't as strong. So like they don't feel. The only way I could see them making a move is if the prices come down. Like they're not in on Franzen. I know that for sure.
Right.
If suddenly Mikhailuk was available for a 4th round pick, I could see him doing that. But just as having a depth guy, they've historically done things like that. And the same would probably be true of the Blues. I think if suddenly the prices came down and they had an opportunity to get a depth guy, they may do that. So maybe that's what will happen on trade deadline.
Yeah, that seems like what would happen. Mike.
I was looking at this the last couple days because I'm always monitoring the standings, Leafs downward trend. But looking at the East, I mean, right now the only team that I think is within reasonable striking distance of the wild card is Florida, and we've talked about how they might have the room, but whether they would be willing to add a player or two before the deadline. I mean, they're only 4 points behind Boston, and I think Boston should make the playoffs, but 4 points is not anything to be trifled with. So I mean, they have a chance, and even Philadelphia might think that they have an outside chance 8 points out. But in the West, I mean, I think the only teams that are really out of it are Arizona and Edmonton. I mean, Colorado's 8 points, Dallas 5 points, LA wins last night. They're only 3 points, and I think that means that they'll probably make whatever kind of move that they can make with their cap limitations. I mean, right now I look at it and I think there's maybe 7 or 8 sellers, and in the next 2 weeks that could grow if a couple teams drop out of it. But I think there'll be a pretty healthy market and a pretty healthy amount of moves. But it just seems right now that everybody is focusing on the same maybe 10 or 15 players. I mean,
what kind of messed this up a little bit was the trade that just happened with Buffalo getting Evander Kane, and not messing it up, but the two, because what we need to see to really make this trade deadline good is we need to see like a team like the Red Wings get Tyler Myers or something. We need one of these teams because there's such a balance out west and in the east, not just everywhere. There's a balance that if somebody makes a big trade, we could see teams feeling like they got to react to that a little bit. And we haven't seen that yet, and that's what we're waiting for. Like, if no one makes a big trade, everyone probably is like going to take their shot with what they have.
You need hockey deals. I mean, you don't need the rental deals. You need a hockey deal.
Yeah, I mean that's why I think there is some hope that the Penguins could make a trade. I mean, if anybody, as I said before, could do it, it could be Rutherford. I think Nashville will do something. I mean, although I find it curious, everybody seems to think they need a defenseman. I see that if I was going to make a move and I was the Predators, I'd be looking to move up front. What's interesting though is some of the like Jim Nill in Dallas, like they're in this. They have a shot to make the playoffs. I think it's important for them to make the playoffs. They would I think there's a priority there of trying to do that. On the other hand, Jim Nill knows that for this team to be successful in the long run, he's a draft guy. He's a guy that he's made a reputation based on being able to draft well, and so he's not a guy that's inclined to give away draft picks. So it'll be interesting to see what he does, being as close as he is to the playoffs, and they could use help for sure. So it'll be interesting to see what he does, and Colorado I think is an unknown entity. So.
Kevin, don't you think that don't you think that the strength of this draft is going to mitigate the price that a number of teams are willing to pay? Like, I mean, right now it's been out there that Sakara and Franzen, that the demand, and I think Bob McKenzie reported this a couple days ago, that right now Toronto and Carolina are demanding, a low first and a prospect. I don't think either team's going to get that. I think it's going to end up, either being the first or maybe a second and a prospect and not that high price. But, nobody's going to give up a first in this draft if they don't absolutely have to.
Yeah, I would agree. And, historically it is a second and a prospect for rentals of that ilk. And even that, I think it's getting hard. Like, I'm sure there are the prime contenders up there are all, reluctant to give up their second round pick. At this point, I just think everybody kind of knows that that's the key to long-term success. And I just, we all know what the statistics are. We've seen them 100 times. 80% of the players taken in the first round make it, and then it's a pretty big drop off. But it's the second round picks do make it. A fair amount of the time. So you gotta hang on to those guys because you need those depth players. So.
Oh, for sure. I wanted to jump right to the rumor chart since we're talking about this now, and talk to Ty a little bit about this. The Sean Bergenheim. He's one of the guys I've updated, and his name came up with the Bruins. I think he's a phenomenal fit. We talked about it a little bit yesterday. I think he's a phenomenal fit in Boston or Nashville, either place, and the island too. There's other places that he could play, but
Winnipeg, he's also been mentioned.
Yeah, I didn't put Winnipeg on here, and I should have probably. But I think that Ty, how do you see the Bruins? I mean, they started off slow. Now they picked up, and now suddenly they're in like a flux pattern right now. It feels like they're not gaining. Everyone seems to say, "Oh, we're never going to catch the Bruins," but at the same time, somebody could catch the Bruins. I mean, they're not that far up.
Yeah, I mean, exactly that. It's one of those situations where when they win, the teams above them win, and when they start to lose, the teams below them start to win. So it's one of those situations where they really haven't been able to gain any ground. They had a nice, I think it was an 8-point or 9-point lead in the wild card heading into the All-Star break, but now that's sort of almost been wiped away now. Florida's only trailing by 4 points, and they have 2 games in hand, so do the math and they can tie them up, sometime soon. The thing with the Bruins, though, is that the top 9 is basically going to be the same, I think. The only difference is that they may just plug guys in different spots. So that's when it comes to a guy like Bergenheim. I question whether or not he can fit in because I don't know how effective he would be in a fourth-line role. Obviously, that doesn't seem like his game. He was a great asset for Tampa Bay back in 2011 during their playoff run. So this is a guy that can contribute and can score and provide you with that complementary scoring that a team like the Bruins would need. But it's just sort of figuring out where these guys factor in or where they fit in a top 9. And with Boston, it's just so hard to see that, especially with David Pastrnak being around for the full season now. Riley Smith is the guy that they're going to try to get him going on their second or their third line. So that's a problem, I think, with any sort of trade you look at with the Boston Bruins. Is that it's just hard to find a forward that can fit in unless it's a fourth line or a third line type energy player, which is something that Peter Chiarelli has been honest about, that he would like to add a little bit more snarl to that bottom 6, maybe get a bit more physical, a bit more strong on the puck there. So maybe a guy like Daniel Winnick is more of a fit than a Bergenheim, but I mean they got to keep their options open here, especially if they're going to continue to score at a 2 goals or fewer, per game base here. So. They have a lot of questions and not a lot of answers right now, especially with their lack of cap space.
Yeah.
And the difference between...
Do you know where their cap space is right now? I haven't looked recently.
Their cap space is, I believe they can add a contract that is around $3 million with the Boychuk trade and with the long-term injured reserve and a few of the moves that they've made along the way here to kind of get a little bit more space. They would send guys down when they didn't have game days, just for that daily cap sort of figure. So, from my understanding, they can add a guy that's anywhere around $3 million. After that, it gets a little bit trickier. You're gonna have to move guys out off their NHL roster, which I think Barkowski's probably a candidate for that. He makes $1.25 million, and he's been a healthy scratch for 16 straight games now. So it doesn't seem like he's a guy that the Bruins are really sort of going to use at any point. So I mean, beyond that though, they seem very reluctant to move guys, especially veteran guys, off this roster.
Yeah.
And Bergenheim's salary is 2.75, but with cap retention they could make that work. Whereas you mentioned Winnick, and I've heard Santarelli being speculated about. I know that there were some Boston scouts at the game last night in Long Island for the Leafs and the Islanders. They're both under 1.5 million, so that might give the Bruins more flexibility if they want to add somebody besides the forward. So
yeah. Another name I think on this list that is really interesting is Michael Del Zotto, who has really done what we don't. It seems more often than not when players have a chance to sort of recover their careers, they don't, right? And in this case, I think Del Zotto really has. I think he's actually turned himself. I mean, he's putting up serious points. He still is defensively, The unfortunate thing for the Flyers is with all the injuries they've had on defense, they have to depend on Del Zotto to play actually defensive roles at times, and that's when he looks terrible. But if you have a team that doesn't need him to play defensive roles, you would be fine. You would really do well with him, and he steps up in the play well. He's very smart out there, and he's been impressive. And I continually hear the Kings and the Sharks, who are two teams that would make sense for him. I know the Flyers want to sign him. They do want to extend him as well, but I'm not sure that they, if they were offered the right amount, they wouldn't go for it and maybe take their chance of signing him as a UFA. They think that they would let him go in this case. What are your thoughts on Del Zotto, Kev?
Well, if I was a NHL contender right now, Del Zotto, although he may have improved his reputation, and he now looks like a player, on the rise again. At this point in the season, usually trying to acquire guys who are proven commodities.
Yeah.
And I still don't see him in that regard yet. I think we still are not sure what he is. And if I'm, maybe the Kings case, because I think they are looking for a transition guy, maybe it does make some sense. But like any other team, if you're trying to win, I think you'd rather get a known player like Mihalik, for example, who you know what you're getting with him. And with Del Zotto, I think you're still a little bit unsure that his defensive game is not as strong as you would like it to be. And although his offense has really been improved this season, and he looks to be the player that everyone thought he could be, it's still not a slam dunk of how he's going to perform. So I think I would be a little more reluctant to take him than I would be, someone who's more of a known quantity.
Yeah, I guess we don't know yet, who's going to be available. Del Zotto, I think, will become available also because Kimmo Timonen is returning, and they're going to have to do something cap wise on that, and that's he's got money they could take. They've also got Kolyakovo, who won't be here.
Del Zotto strikes me more as a Plan B option for teams that strike out on the bigger names that are there, that are going to be out there, like Mathot if he's traded, or Franzen, or
It's funny because I see that if to me he's Plan B for Mike Green. That's the guy. If you're looking for Mike Green, Del Zotto is your cheaper version of Mike Green, right? Because he's again purely offensive for the most part. Del Zotto is nothing like those other defensemen though. He's not. No. That's the thing. You're looking at a totally different kind of player. So Green apparently not available as of this week. So
I could see a fit in San Jose, because San Jose, since Boyle left and via free agency, they've needed another offensive defenseman, a guy who can skate, carry the puck up the ice. And Del Zotto can do that. And you essentially have Burns and sometimes Vlasic on the point on the power play. I think Del Zotto probably could be in the mix there as a power play guy for that team. And he's not, I don't think they're up against the cap, but Del Zotto's salary is $1.3 million. So to get an inexpensive guy who can provide a little offense on the back end, I think that's an option.
Yeah,
well, it really comes down to price.
Yeah.
At a second or a third round pick, I don't know. Fifth round pick, I love him.
Right.
If it depends on the cost. If if they're willing to move him and it wouldn't, then you're willing to take a chance on him, I think.
Yeah, that's how it's got to be at this point. And I think that some teams are going to have to do that. I mean, the question remains, though. A team like the Flyers is right on the edge. I think the Flyers and the Avalanche are sort of in the same boat. In the conferences, these are the teams that are sort of okay. They really probably can't make the playoffs, but they still have a shot. If they get hot, or they stay hot. They have to do kind of what the Wild just did. Which is go crazy for a little while.
Yeah.
Now, Bob McKenzie reported that Montreal is floating Alexei Emelin and Lars Eller, so that's pretty magical to be able to float people and players in general. But no, they're out there. Emelin and Eller are out there as trade bait leading up to the deadline.
Yeah.
I've heard the only thing I've heard in regards to this is that Emelin would be involved if there was a Yakupov deal. That was the one word that I heard, that Montreal likes Yakupov a lot, and that Emelin would be involved in that. But Emelin and Eller, for a team that's top of this is kind of aggressive to be floating players. I mean, this is not, they're doing well. I mean, I watched this team play. They beat the Flyers the other night. I watched them play, and the one thing that I left with Montreal is that they are probably as hard a working team as there is in the NHL.
Well, Mark,
they've got incredible goaltending, right? So they've got these two things that they just work. They work their tails off. They get stronger as the game goes, where other teams don't, and they're not a good starting team, but they get so much stronger, and they've got some really good young players, but they don't have a star. But Emelin and Eller, what are your thoughts, Ty, on that?
Well, I think you look at Lars Eller, and you sort of see that he's sort of been, usurped by Alex Galchenyuk, and he's had a great year.
Yeah.
He's not as strong. Galchenyuk's not as strong as Eller at the dot, but this is still a player that's growing into his own and is really emerging as a legitimate weapon for Montreal. And you look at who else they have. I mean, they have Plekanec and Desharnais, and these are guys that they've proven that they can be solid contributors to this team, and that makes a guy like Eller a bit expendable there. And I think, especially for Montreal, it seems like they still have some questions there in the back end. With Weaver or Gilbert, who would you rather have in there? So I mean that's something that they have to address as well. But I mean, we got to credit to Mark Bergevin here. He's building a great team over there, and I think that they are who they are because of their goaltending. I mean, Carey Price is having a Vezina, maybe even a Hart Trophy kind of year, the way he keeps Montreal in games and the way he performs. So I mean, that's the backbone of their team, and then up front you have Subban and Markov, and I think that when you look at this team, they need some minor tweaks, but they can still hit a home run, especially if they're dangling these pieces out there. They could become the the team in the East, especially given how wide open it is and the advantage that they conceivably have in a playoff series. If it were the Canadiens and the Penguins and it's Price against Fleury, the way this guy plays in the postseason. Talking about Price, is something It's something out of this world, honestly. Go back to the Olympics and the playoffs this past year. I mean, this is a dangerous team.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Emelin is it's long known that he's not been a favorite of our favorite coach, Mr. Therrien.
I can't say anything bad about Therrien anymore. I
know. I'm just saying that he's been scratched a couple times as a healthy scratch, and there's apparently been a little friction there. And he's under contract for another 3 years at over $4 million. So if they see an opportunity to maybe bring in a forward who can help them, with some offense, then that might be a move that Bergevin is willing to make. I mean, the same thing with Eller. I mean, Eller, I think, is a pretty good two-way forward, but he's not a great scorer, and I think that's really what that team needs in the playoffs, is to add another guy who can put the puck in the net. Similar to what they did last year with Vanek, and that didn't work perfectly, but they do need some more secondary scoring if they hope to get further along than they did last year.
Right. Oh, I agree. But yeah, as a sort of a closet Canadiens watcher, because I watch them a lot, Emelin, when he's been hurt, has hurt them. I mean, I wonder pulling him out of the lineup, how easy that they have not played as well with him out of the lineup as they have with him in the lineup in the past. I mean, maybe that's changing now, but what are your thoughts, Kev, on this whole thing?
Well, I think this is a classic case of maybe the GM realizing that the league holds both of those players in higher regard than they do. Not that they don't like those players. But Emblin's reputation is a pretty feisty, heavy-hitting guy, hard to play against.
Yeah.
And I think Lars Eller, I think people see that he has more potential, and maybe what the Canadians are thinking is, we don't think he's going to get there. And Emlyn, although we recognize that he is hard to play against, obviously the coach and he don't see eye to eye. That maybe they feel they could turn both of those players into an upgrade at the forward position. So it just may be that they're looking to make a real hockey trade here. I mean, yeah. I agree with what's been said about Montreal too. Like we wouldn't have to go far last season to think that the Canadians could have gotten in the final.
Yeah.
Carey Price, had he not been hurt, could have been Lundqvist, and we could see the exact same scenario for Montreal this season, where Carey Price just carries them right in. I mean, he's certainly capable of that, and I think, in my mind, the Canadians have been underrated. I didn't believe in them earlier this season, but the more you watch them, I think they're exactly as you said. They give a consistent effort. Have they been the league's most consistent team this season in terms of what you expect to see and what you get from them?
I would say they've gone the longest without a slump. Like they managed to not slump. They lose a couple games, but not more.
Yeah, no, I've been very impressed with them, and I love what Bergevin has done with this team. I think he's been a shrewd, sharp administrator, and it's not easy in Montreal, as we all know. There's considerable pressure, and who knows what he'll be able to turn those two players into if he decides to trade them.
Yeah.
And the heat is not on them to get a big time scorer. I mean, because of Price, because they're a good defensive team, they just need somebody who can kick in a goal every once and again. They don't need to go out and make the Vanek deal. They don't need a top six guy. I think they need a third line guy who can give them a key goal at a key time. And if they get that might be the difference between them winning and losing a playoff round.
Yeah. Now this is a good tweet by a friend of all of ours, Michael Russo, who I like this one. This is in the 9-1-2 streak, the Wild have allowed 17 goals, 1.4 per game. In the 2-8-4 streak before the Dubnyk trade, they allowed 58 goals, 4.1 per game. All right, so that's a pretty staggering. I mean, they from 17 goals to 58 goals. That's a huge number, almost 3 goals less a game essentially. And yet, what he doesn't say in this tweet, which is something that I think we all think about, is during that period of time, the Wild have gone from being like 9 points out to being 4 points out. Like that's basically what the difference is.
Yeah.
Through all that, going 9-1-2, they are in the thing, but they're still. That's how crazy this league is to try to make up ground.
Well, that loss last night by Calgary to the LA Kings, I mean, is just. It's made it even more of a race in the West because Minnesota is only 2 points behind Calgary, and I believe LA is only 3 or they're 3 points behind Calgary. So we have a race for that final wild card spot, and I don't know what the cap figure for Minnesota is, but they may be able to make a move before the deadline to add one more piece, and we know LA is going to be looking to do that, and it's a question of whether Calgary is going to just ride this out, and this is an unexpected season for them, and if they make the playoffs, that's great, but they have so much room on under the cap, and I think the excitement of the fan base right now is they want to make the playoffs, so will Brad Treliving make some moves as well?
Yeah, I mean, and what we don't think about with the Wild is that they, over the past few trade deadlines and UFA periods, have actually become quite an exciting team. They actually go out. They actually do make moves at the trade deadline. They picked up some pretty good players over the last couple trade deadlines, and of course, they've signed big players as well at the UFA. And this was a team that didn't do a whole lot like that before. But in the last 3 or 4 years, like the Pominville trade was 2 years ago, right? What was the trade last year? It was a big. They made one last year too.
Who, Minnesota?
Yeah.
Matt Molson,
right? And they'll make moves. They're not shy to do that. So what do you have news-wise for us, Josh?
Yes, quite a few things as per usual. Let's begin with what came out probably within the last half hour. Lou Lamoriello told everybody, the media and everybody, that Ryan Clough is out for the rest of the season, and he doesn't know yet if he'll even be able to play next year. So whatever ailment he has, it must be pretty bad.
That's pretty big news there, man.
Yeah.
Where do we go from there? What's next, Josh?
Yes, moving on. Largely out of the spotlight since being turfed by the Canucks last May, John Tortorella appeared on radio this morning, took full responsibility for his dismissal. I don't think I did the job for our team in the second half of the season with our consistency, and I think that's what cost me my job. We couldn't stop the losing streaks. We needed to win a couple games within those areas. Quite honestly, I deserved to be fired after that second half of the year. And if you guys remember, Tortorella was suspended for 15 days for going after the coaching staff of the Calgary Flames, and that was the longest suspension in coaching history. He also commented on that. You're talking to a guy that went down a hallway after another coach last year, which was so across the line, so embarrassing to my organization and my team. You live and die by the sword a little bit there. That was really one of the bad spots of my season.
Wow.
So I guess Tortorella wants another job, so he's
not exactly a come to God moment by Tortorella, but something, something. Yeah. I mean, he did stop sort of saying, and I was a jerk, on top of it all. Like besides the fact that I couldn't get them to win in the second half of the season.
Yeah. Does he get another job?
No. I don't think so. Anybody? Think
I wouldn't rule it out. I mean, everyone's going to remember that he certainly transformed the Rangers team. I mean, the defensive aggressiveness that guys like Mark Stahl and Girardi and McDonough was born under his stewardship.
Yeah.
He has value as a coach. He just has to change. And most coaches do evolve.
Yeah.
And if he could basically learn to treat players with more respect. Now, I'm sure he would argue with me that he does treat them with respect, but when you talk to the guys who played for him, they just think it was the hardest thing they've ever had to do in their life. Yeah. So he has to change.
I think he's a good fit in a non-traditional, maybe a southern U.S. market, not in Canada, not in a big media market, because I think that gets him in trouble. But if it's like, if Tippett leaves Arizona or Las Vegas expansion franchise or something like that, I think he'd be a good fit. And I think he'll get a job again.
He needs a strong GM, too. Mm-hmm. He also needs someone who can say to him, John, calm down.
Enough's enough.
Yeah. And, you're a good coach. Stop, get along with your players. They have to do your bidding.
Yeah, I mean he can evolve, but he's been trending in the wrong direction, and he's not moving. He's basically started off being more friendly and gotten worse with each franchise he's gone to. But
I can guarantee one thing, Nick. He will not be in the mix for the Maple Leafs job next year.
That's such a shame because wouldn't that be fun? Anyway,
who gets a job first, him or Keenan?
Keenan's never coaching in the NHL again, I don't think.
Well, yeah. I guess I would agree with that. Although you never say never.
It's hard to say never. That's a hard word to use.
I mean, he's been pretty darn successful in the KHL. So
exactly, and if I had the two of them ahead of me, I would go with Keenan before I went with George.
I think they should have brought him in instead of Horacek in Toronto.
What's interesting about both of those coaches, and they're both really, really bright guys.
Yeah.
And when you sit down and chat with them, like I like Mike Keenan. I've known him his entire career. When he got fired from Chicago, I remember I went to his house and did a big story on him. And he's an interesting guy. And guys that I like Roenick and Chelios, like they like him. They like Mike Keenan. They liked playing for him. And I know there's something to him. And John Tortorella, I've had good conversations with him when it was just him and I. Yeah. He's just not good in a press conference format, and I think, I wouldn't want to play for him.
Yeah.
The thing with Tortorella is, from my personal experience here, is that he tends to, if the situation sort of goes south, he tends to throw people under the bus, whether that's intentional or not. Is maybe he's just not good at biting his tongue with the media, and that's not everyone has that sort of quality. But if you ask him about players, and what he likes, what he expects, he gives you an honest answer. And I think that's one of the things that we sort of lose in today's world of cliches and get the puck in deep and go to work, is that if you ask Tortorella a good question about a player, he'll give you an honest answer, whether that's for better or worse.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no, I
That's well said.
The one interesting story about Tortorella that I'll never forget, when they won the Cup that year, people have forgotten this, but Dan Boyle's house caught on fire in the middle of the night, and a lot of memorabilia was destroyed, and the next day he was at practice, and he was obviously still distraught. It was very emotional, when your belongings are burned up.
That was in Ottawa, right? This house in Ottawa?
I don't know where his house. I thought it was in Tampa, but I don't know that. But no, I'm pretty sure it was. It was in Tampa. But anyway, he was really saddened by it all, and he was trying to come to grips with the loss of his personal property and a lot of the stuff that he cherished. And when we asked Tortorella about it, he said his famous quote was, it's just sticks and bricks. It's no problem. He'll be over it. And we had just, and he was teary-eyed when he was telling us this stuff. And I thought, wow, I mean, John, you haven't really talked to your player, have you? Because he is upset about it. I'm sure, 12 hours later, he had, made his peace with it and moved on, as everyone would. But at that point in time, it was a really sort of an odd comment. Like, he kind of said to me that he really had not had any level of discussion with him. Right. He clearly was upset over what had happened, as most people would.
Yeah, no, that's completely reasonable. Wow, so. That's a good story. Josh, what do you got?
And you're right, Kevin. It was Tampa. $300,000 in damage to his house.
Wow.
Moving on. How about this, guys? I don't know.